elements to it. The biological understanding of what fasting is about is really very simple and it's not contradicted through any conventional understanding of biology. It's just a bit of a shift in mindset to put the pieces together in a different way. So the best way to look at it is what happens when you're eating. And the main area of concern, or the main kickstarter to this process, is to do with the pancreas. The pancreas produces masses of enzymes that go into the digestive system and aid the breaking down of food. It chops it up into smaller and smaller components so that you can absorb it through the bowel wall and then use it as a body. And when you stop eating, several things about the bowel profoundly change. And the first thing is that the pancreas stops putting those enzymes into the bowel. It still creates those same enzymes, but they become available to the blood. And that's where you start to get this very vaguely enveloped word, detox. So the elements are still being produced by the pancreas, and they go into the blood in order to facilitate the immune system. And it's an interesting point to note that the immune system uses exactly the same digestive enzymes that the bowel uses. And the reason it uses them is because the parts of the immune system come across foreign matter in the blood and they break it down. They come across anything they don't recognise and they issue forth these enzymes that have been originally produced in the pancreas to chop these things up in exactly the same way that food gets digested inside the bowel. And so we have this balance point between the more food is being taken into the digestive system and requires more and more of these enzymes to break it up, the less of those enzymes are available to the immune system to keep the blood clear. And so we are progressively, as a race, certainly over the past 100 years, let alone 1,000 years or 10,000 years, been eating denser and denser, heavier and heavier, more unnatural foods. So more and more of these enzymes are piling into the digestive system, and the immune system is becoming very deficient in them. It can't get enough of them. And so stuff starts to pile up in the blood. And the blood can only get so thick, it can only get so loaded with toxic material. So it has to start dumping it into the body. And this is where fasting comes in. When you fast, your digestive system closes down. The enzymes are still produced in the pancreas, but they go into the blood, so that the blood, or the immune system, can chop up this old detritus in the blood and get rid of it. And the way that it gets rid of it is it passes through the liver. The blood is constantly being cleaned by the liver. And this material accumulates in the liver and then gets drained off of the liver in bile down into the small intestines and will make its way out. And therefore the blood is becoming cleaner. And then once the blood becomes cleaner, then a tissue structure that's been laden with lots of toxic material can throw that material off into the blood, and then will go through the liver and get cleaned and put into the bowel as bile. And that system has been used for thousands and thousands of years, very successfully. But there's a bit of a flaw in that plan, and that is when you stop filling the stomach, when you stop eating, you don't stimulate something called a gastrocolic reflex, which is a reflex that tells your bowel to empty. When the stomach is full, the bowel should empty. We have this in all mammals, except most modern day human beings, who have completely overridden that with this whole toilet stigma that we draw up around it. And we use the toilet as few times as possible. We avoid it at all costs. And so we very efficiently suppress a gastrocolic reflex. And so it still wants to work, but it's suppressed in most people. But when you stop eating, it stops being stimulated. So the bowel closes. It goes into stasis, stops moving completely. So meanwhile, all this other work is happening. The pancreas is producing enzymes for the immune system is cleaning the blood is being cleaned by the liver, and the liver is throwing out bile into the digestive system, but then it's not emptying. So that material sits in the digestive system. And the digestive system's primary role is to draw material back into the blood. And so you're dumping material out of the blood into the bowel, and then it's naturally getting drawn back from the bowel back into the blood. So you reprocess and reprocess and reprocess the same materials. And so these things are simply a way of making that process more efficient. And the first one of those is psyllium husks. Psyllium husks have a tremendous capacity to absorb material. And so we're going to use, say, that much of it. I'll show you how to do all of this in a moment, for the sake of the explanation. The psyllium husks are the husks of the flea seed, and when they come into contact with water, they absorb masses of water, and they remain very fibrous. So effectively, they bulk up. So the first thing that happens is your stomach gets full of psyllium, and that stimulates the gastrocolic reflex to keep the bowel moving, to keep the bowel alive. But it's just wood nutritionally. You can't actually digest any of it. So your body doesn't issue those enzymes in the pancreas into the digestive system. They go to the blood still, so that your immune system gets to do what it wants to do, chops it all up, throws it out through the liver, back into the bowel. Once it's in the bowel, it gets wrapped up and absorbed in the psyllium. So it then can't come back into the blood. So you've made the whole system much more efficient. You've kept the bowel moving, and you've stopped this stuff coming back into the blood. The other two components here make that stage a bit more efficient. Digestive enzymes aid the chopping up of this material that's in the bowel, and chops it up even further so that it goes into the smaller partitions in the psyllium. You'll be taking one of those each time. And then the bentonite clay, which again has been used for thousands of years for this and many other processes, has a very tiny particle size. So it has a very large surface area, and it has a very powerful negative charge. So it pulls positively charged things towards it and absorbs them, or neutralises them, holds onto them. The point is, again, they can't come back into the blood. They're trapped in the bowel. And then at the end of that process is the colonics, which are designed purely for no other purpose than to scrape out all of this psyllium that the body is dumping into the lower bowel. Colonics on their own don't really do that much. They get rid of waste that your body would get rid of anyway. But in their proper context, as they were designed in this, they form the final part of this non-biological pump. So your blood gets cleaned by the enzymes being produced by your liver, and or your blood is, the materials in your blood are broken down by the enzymes that are made available to your immune system, and then your liver gets those things out of the blood. So your blood is then sparkling, and your liver pumps that stuff into the bowel. But then one of your deeper tissue structures says, wonderful, clean blood, have that, get rid of that. And so then the blood becomes very thick again. And then the liver cleans it out and the blood becomes very clear again. And you'll notice this as a very, almost absolutely consistent experience for everybody. That you'll go through periods in which you are sparkly and bright and alive. Your senses will be completely alert, feel fantastic. Which is when your blood is clear and clean, carrying loads of oxygen, carrying loads of nourishment. Every cell is alive. And then something will dump into the blood. And for a while you go into this sort of malaise, you go into this sort of treacly state, when you start to feel foggy and you just want to go to bed and you'll be dragging yourself around for a while. And then that will get cleared from the blood and you'll come up again. It can take minutes or it can take days. Totally depends on what your patterns are and what's being dumped, how efficient your liver is, all of that kind of stuff. So there's no way of knowing how long it will take, but what you can guarantee is that it will change. Because your body's miraculous at doing this. It knows exactly what it's doing. The final part in this process is the juice. The juice that's provided is pretty much solely to keep you from going into a water fast. A water fast is the most sparkly way of doing this. It's hard, so hard to do, because all of your systems will come to a complete halt, and we hate that. We like everything to be normal within this range. It can be a little bit better or a little bit worse, but it has to be in that range of emotion. But a water fast will take you way under that. You will go grinding along the bottom for the week. You'll be crawling around if you get out of bed at all. And if you're willing to go through that, if you can get to that place in yourself that's completely okay with that, then you'll come out the most sparkly at the end of the week. But it is hard work. I don't advise it to anybody that hasn't done it before, hasn't done anything like this before. I advise you to use some juice, and to use just enough juice, which I'll show you in a moment, to keep you above that level of grinding on the bottom. It's just enough so that your system has just enough energy for you to not have to go completely downward. If you drink loads and loads of juice, you'll be bouncing off the walls for the whole week. A full-on, undiluted juice fast is not a detox. That's a renourishment, that's a replenishment, that's something else. A juice fast in this sense, a juice detox, is when you're using the absolute minimum of juice that you can use. And that's your balance point. Use more juice, you'll feel better. Wonderful, that's an important thing to do. But use too much and you're not doing any work. You're just hanging out, which is fine. your money, it's your time. But if you want to do work, try and use as little as possible. And so skip the occasional juice, or skip a whole 3 days of juice and see how you feel. But if you start to feel really, if you get beyond yourself in it, then do some more juice.